Hello and welcome to SLP Summit. Our next Summit. Our next course is Empowered, How to Advocate for Your Caseload and Workload Wellness, sponsored by SLP Toolkit and SLP Now. And I am Lisa Kathman with SLP Toolkit. And before we begin, always have to do those quick housekeeping items to remind you of how to communicate with each other and the Bright team and the presenter. So the chat is all about you. Please use that area to communicate with other live participants about course content. And if you have questions for our speaker today, use the questions tab. If you have questions or comments or needs or concerns or anything related to the Bright Ideas platform, go ahead and use the chat bubble in the lower right corner. That will get you in touch with the Bright Ideas Media team, or email at hello@bethebrightest.com. If you are looking to participate in having us send your participation to the ASHA registry, there is an ASHA CE opt-in form located in the resources section. So check that out. And again, just email hello@bethebrightest.com with any questions. So we are going to get to it. Joining us today is Stephanie Swigert, and she is an expert on mindfulness and compassion-based practices, and we'll be speaking today on, again, empowering us and advocating for our caseload and workload. So it's an amazing way to end Summit. Stephanie, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Yes, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. I'm just so excited to be there. Shout out to everybody. I see where you're coming from in the chat. So if you haven't put it in there yet, go ahead and post where you're coming from. I'm super excited to be here. We're going to start right now on the top of the hour. So welcome to this 60-minute course. Again, it's Empowered, How to Advocate for Your Caseload and Workload Wellness. My name is Stephanie Michelle Swigert. I'm a licensed and practicing school-based SLP. I am living out in Los Angeles, California, but right now I'm currently in Pennsylvania. One of the reasons why I love being a school-based SLP is because we get those summers off and we get to have that vacation time. So I'm here in Pennsylvania with my family, with my daughter. Her dad had to go back to Los Angeles to work, but we've also brought our little 4-pound Yorkie along with us to travel. So it's really nice catching up with family, doing some hiking. I'm a hiking enthusiast. I'm a lover of the outdoors, movie theaters, all things chai lattes. So that's just a little bit about me. I do own Golden State Speech Pathology Services. It's a non-public agency where we have an amazing team of SLPs and SLPs that are working in Southern California. I'm also a certified teacher of mindfulness and compassion-based practices. So excited to be here. Thank you all so much for coming, and we can get started. As always, we need to kind of point out what our financial and non-financial disclosures are. So again, as I mentioned, I do have a non-public agency, Golden State Speech Pathology Services. I do receive compensation for the sale of professional development that I have on digital courses that I sell. And I am here today to be a volunteer speaker, and I do not have any non-financial disclosures. So, okay, guys, I want you to think about this for just a minute. More and more SLPs, speech language pathologists out there, are really tackling this increased stress, frustration, fatigue, overwhelm, just emotional exhaustion, and a lot of burnout, right, from that stress. And occupational stress is coming from all of these rising caseload numbers, these excessive meetings that we're going to, unmanageable workloads, and even conflict that's showing up within our teams, or maybe with our supervisors, between the mentor and the mentee relationship. And due to all of this, I'm sure you've seen it in social media or in talking with your friends at work, there's a lot of SLPs out there that are contemplating alternative careers. So give me a yes in the chat box if you agree. If this has ever been you, or you've sort of been experiencing this yourself, or you know somebody who is, or maybe you're even at a site where you've seen that turnover, right? The SLP turnover is quite significant where you're working. So I think we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we as the clinicians can really do? How are we going to sustain ourselves in this, ultimately, this quite demanding field that we're in? It's an amazing field, but it's a demanding field. We love the heart of the field. We put our blood, sweat, and tears into getting into this very career path. So we need to know, what can we do to make it sustainable? So guys, what if I told you that there are healthy and effective strategies that are really going to assist you with being able to manage your roles and your responsibilities, as well as your physical health and your well-being, and they're going to help to keep you moving forward in a way where you're going to experience more joy and happiness in the job rather than seeking alternative careers and leaving behind the reasons and your why for getting into this field in the first place. If that sounds like something you are interested in learning about, I am so glad you're here, because that is what we are going to dive into. All right, let's get started, because I don't use this term lightly, but guys, we are going to be on a transformative journey. I don't use that word transformative lightly, because what we're doing is we're going to be shifting. We're going to be shifting away from feeling emotionally and physically burnout, overworked, undervalued as speech clinicians, to moving into this space now where we're empowered and we're confident and we're more resilient, and we're creating those deeper, more personal relationships in the job, where there's enhanced communication and lots of personal growth. I want you to be someone who's shifting into knowing what your value is, what your worth is, so that you can show up in your role living your best SLP life, or whatever your professional role is. So the way I'm going to do that today is by sharing simple, easy, very digestible principles of nonviolent communication, or also what I refer to a lot as compassionate communication. And these strategies are really designed to kind of revolutionize your practice, but also to enhance your well-being. It's so very important. And I want to show you how you can use this type of communication style to really effectively advocate for your caseload and your workload with the higher ups, with those people who are making the decisions. So throughout our time together, we're going to touch on a few key principles, and it's going to be just enough. I want to plant those seeds just enough to make a meaningful impact in our limited time frame together today. And you're going to learn what are these practical strategies, so you can get out there and you can start setting boundaries. You can initiate compassionate conversations with those higher ups, and also you can reclaim balance in your caseload workload. And the best part is you really don't need to add anything else to your to-do list, because I'm going to show you how you can take these strategies and you can seamlessly integrate these principles into what it is that you're doing already, into your existing routines. So let's take a moment. Let's just breathe easy. Let's relax. Let's congratulate yourselves for being here today, for taking the time, for showing up to learn. You are on the path to living your best work life. And I'm super excited and just honored to be able to guide you in that process. Don't go anywhere, because the best part is at the end of our course today, not only are you going to get a certificate from SLP Summit for your PD hours, but I'm answering those burning questions. Any questions that you have, I'm here to support you and provide those answers, or get those answers for you if I don't have them. I want everybody today to really share in this mindset of thinking here and now, right? Here and now, mindfulness, present moment awareness, because we're in this virtual space together, right? I can't see you guys, but we're here together. We're in this space and you're here to learn. So I invite you, if you can, turn off your cell phones. If you're not watching this on your cell phone, minimize any other windows that you might have open at this time. And what we want to do is we want to move away from distractions or any notifications that can pop up. You guys, we have all kinds of things nowadays that are trying to fight and vie for our attention. So what I want you to do is, if we can, close the door if it's noisy outside. I want to come together and collect right into this space here and now in this present moment. I value you. I value your time. And I really want you to be able to walk away from this class feeling like your time was well spent. And now you have a framework, we give you a framework that you can begin to implement as soon as you're ready. So let's begin with that. I thought it would be a perfect idea for those of you who have been to other courses that I share. I always kind of start with a little bit of a grounding exercise. This helps us just kind of leave the life that we were with right before logging on and leave that behind, and kind of refocuses and centers our attention right into the present moment, which is here and now, right? And I love this type of experiential exercise because the strategies I share really can be used personally or professionally. That's why I love them so much. That's why I'm passionate about them, because you can use them in any area of your life. And grounding exercises can really be formal or informal, and the science is there to support them. It shows that we can release any unwanted energy when we use grounding practices. It can help us to sustain attention, get clarity. It can help improve our sleep, and they can help to reduce stress. So let's take a moment. We're going to rein it in. And wherever you are, you can stay standing, you can stay sitting. You don't want to do this if you're driving and listening. But what we're going to do is, if it feels right for you, you can just kind of like look down a little bit or use a soft gaze to kind of tune out the background, or you can close your eyes if it feels right for you too. We're going to take 3 deep calming breaths together. Okay, so what you're doing is you're just going to inhale deeply through your nose, and you're going to exhale through your mouth, making your exhale a little bit longer than your inhale. And we're just kind of releasing any tension, any stress, anything that we brought with us. So let's do that together. If it feels right, you can take your hand and place it on your belly for a belly breath. Just like that, we're letting go of everything on our plate. Breathing in again. Repeating this one more time. In this space, we are just releasing, we're connecting, we're fully here together. And you know what that does? That helps to calm the nervous system and helps to regulate ourselves. And regulating our nervous system can be such a benefit before diving into any challenging conversation or communication. And it's really crucial for supporting us with getting clear, with being able to show up with empathy, and also being able to show up saying what we want to say, having that effective communication. And by grounding ourselves, we can do this through breath practices, or there's many other formal or informal practices that you can find online. What we're doing is we're creating a calm and centered mind. And this really enables us to now say, hey, I'm ready. I can go in, I can approach this difficult conversation. I've regulated myself, right? And now I have the opportunity for greater resilience and more emotional intelligence. So this is a really proactive approach. I love these approaches because it not only enhances our ability to show up and actively listen to others and to be able to respond thoughtfully to others, but it promotes healthier relationships, healthier interactions. And those relationships, that's what it's all about, guys. That's why we are here. So we're doing the work we do for those strong relationships. So thank you for those of you who were able to start off with that exercise, and feel free to take that into your personal life. 3 big, deep belly breaths, and the neuroscience is there to support it. So we have a lot to cover. I'm going to keep moving forward, and I want to let you know as we go through this course together, you are exactly where you need to be. I want to talk about who I had in mind when I wanted to share this course and see which one of these you identify with the most, okay? Maybe you're the clinician who tends to avoid conflict, right? You're feeling overwhelmed by your workload and your caseload, but are hesitant to kind of show up and address it directly. And you know what? I'm just out of here. I think I'm going to quit. I'm going to look for another job, something that aligns better with my needs. If that's you, I'm glad you're here. If you're the clinician who passively accepts the workload and caseload without really asserting those boundaries or stepping up and advocating for change, but meanwhile, you're like out there on the sidelines, burning out, wishing things were different, I'm glad you're here. This message is for you. If you're the clinician who expresses frustration or resentment indirectly, right? Perhaps you've got a little subtle resistance or some sarcasm underneath your breath regarding your workload or your caseload issues, I'm glad you're here. This message is for you. Maybe you are the clinician who, there you go, you confront those workload and caseload challenges head on. You show up, I know what to say. I'm going to advocate, and I'm going to do it loudly and forcefully and try to get these changes that are going to happen. And you express your needs, but you do so in a way that's openly unconcerned about what anybody else is needing. So sort of that power over dynamic. If that's you, I want to normalize that. And I'm going to say, I'm glad you're here. Okay. If any of these sound like you, just know you are in the right place at the right time. I think identifying your communication style can help you learn what's the next step. How can I effectively address workload and caseload concerns, but also maintain professionalism, right? And compassion. So let's take a look at all 4 of these. I want to know which one speaks to you. So if you guys want to throw it in the chat box, you can pick a letter that's on there. If you are conflict avoiding, go ahead and put an A. If you are passive, you can put B. Passive aggressive, put C. If you are conflict confrontational, go ahead and put D. If you're not sure yet and some of these terms are new to you, that's okay too. Let's take a look in the chat box over time and kind of see if there are some other people that can relate with the styles that we have. Because no matter which one resonates for you guys, Or maybe you don't align with any of those and you have a completely different reason for being here that maybe I didn't even mention, and you just, or maybe you want to get some free live CEUs. I want you to know I fully support you. I'm just so excited to be able to share this, to share professional development in the area of compassionate communication and special education, tying them together, right? And really looking at how can I use nonviolent communication to effectively advocate for change, to show up and advocate for my caseload and my workload with the higher ups. If there's any of you right now that can relate to this, you just came off of a school year really struggling with a high caseload or workload, and you're kind of feeling burnout from it, pop a me, capital M-E, in the chat box. Maybe you're sitting there and you're like, I know the caseload that I'm going back to, and I know it's only going to be more when I get back there. My heart kind of races just thinking about it. Go ahead and pop me in the chat box, because I imagine that that's got to be very frustrating and leads to these feelings of being overwhelmed and exhausted, and leaves you kind of thinking, you know what? I need more understanding in the job. I need more support in the job. I need people to see things, a shared reality, to see what it's like for me and what I'm going through, and how these things are negatively impacting the work that I'm doing, or negatively impacting all of the helping professionals out there when their caseload and workload is so high. And guess what? It's high not just because, we're treating and testing, but we have all of the workloads high because we have all these hours invested in meetings or staffings, or when we're writing reports, or all the amounts of triennials or the progress reports that come due at different times, and all the other duties we have indirectly, like collaboration and prep. And it's like, I get overwhelmed just thinking about all the roles and responsibilities that I have to do, right? It's very real. It's very much alive, especially in the system. So imagine what it would be like if you felt empowered to really navigate challenging conversations with confidence and compassion, and you were able to effectively advocate for your needs while you're also maintaining those professional relationships, right? Picture yourself, I want to go each day to work. I want to show up with clarity. I want to show up with resilience. I want to have strong inner armor. I want to know that I have the tools that I need to be able to manage my workload and my caseload, issues with ease, right? I want to envision this workplace where people can openly communicate with respect, right? With this respect. And I want to envision this workplace where there's more mutual understanding. You get me, you know what I'm going through. There's empathy, there's collaboration, because now I'm going to thrive. I'm going to thrive in my role as a dedicated clinician. Guys, this vision, it's within reach, and together I know that we can make it a reality. I know we can imagine a workplace where we confidently navigate challenging conversations, where we advocate for our needs, where we speak up, where we thrive amidst these workload pressures, while we're also strengthening collaboration and understanding. And I think we do that by bringing compassionate communication to our professional roles, guys. It is a powerful and a strategic way to really make an impact in the profession and in our world, while we're also scooping up all those science-backed benefits. So the first one of our course objectives here is really to name, what are the pain points? What are these challenges that clinicians are facing when we're given these high caseload workloads? Okay, so I'll go a little bit above and beyond that. I want to at least get you 6. They're in your handouts, so you don't have to rush to write these down, but you're going to use them in your advocacy. So make sure you print off those handouts and you have them. It's not always easy to be able to step up and address the challenges that we face as clinicians when we're trying to manage these things, but you'll have the tools, you'll have the handouts. And people have shared with me, I don't know how to express myself. I don't know how to express this clearly, what's going on, and why this isn't working in a way that they're going to understand me and they're going to get it, or they're going to even care, right? They're not going to see it from my side. So I'm here to support you with that. So let's get clear. We're going to create a list of the objective pain points, right? These are the challenges with managing large caseloads. And so I'm going to share about 6 of them. So follow along with me on this. And these are what we're going to use to help us build our case when we're communicating with the higher ups. The first one is to get clarity on your numbers. Seems like a no-brainer, right? I know my numbers. But what we want to do is, it's really about expressing the number of cases you have, and then pointing out there is diversity and complexity within that number. 24 for you might not look like 24 for me, right? Not all clients on your caseload have the same needs and are going to require the same amount of workload. So remember the diversity and the complexity when you're looking at your numbers. Identify your time constraints. So what I mean by this is we all know there's only so many paid hours in a day, right? And no one's working for free. You're not working for free. Okay. So how is it possible that we're going to fit all this in without, some part of your workload now getting a little bit less attention, right? Whether it's the extra time and attention to the details of the report that you're writing, or the extra time to plan those really meaningful sessions with your clients that are so unique to each client. The challenge here is the balance, right? It's like balancing that time to ensure that you're going to be thorough in all the different areas of our work. And there's so many different areas. So identify those time constraints. Take inventory of the emotional impact. Okay. Emotions are real. With emotions, there is wisdom. Pay attention to them, write them down, note them, because they are messengers to you. And it is okay and normal to feel them. Okay. So consider the emotional impact that this higher caseload or workload is going to have on you. Right. And by this, I mean, what is the potential for reduced well being? For burnout, for exhaustion, compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is real. And the burden that can come from dealing day in and day out with physically or emotionally challenging cases. Carrying that weight is heavy. So take inventory on how you are feeling. Number 4, describe how efficiency is impacted. So what I mean by this is it's important to really look at the struggles with efficiency, right? Like being able to maintain efficiency when I've got this high caseload or high workload, knowing that this could impact a lot of different areas of my work. It could impact my documentation, for example, for each of my cases. It can impact my time or ability to be able to collaborate with other professionals or family members. It could impact my planning sessions and scheduling of therapy, or it could impact the outcome of, my productivity or how the outcomes are with the clients when I'm working with the clients. Pay attention to this. Number 5, express the relationship components with the clients. Okay, we're in this for the relationships. That's our why. We care about these other humans, right? We care about them and we want them to do well. So think about this. It's important to really consider how we all know the saying, with quantity, we can lose quality, right? More quantity, we lose quality. This is true for the relationship aspects of our job, right? You might be nodding your head. This might be news to you. But when we're rushing here, there, everywhere, just to get things done, we're losing some of that valuable time to really establish rapport. Rapport takes time. It takes time to connect with our clients, right? It takes time to connect with our colleagues or to collaborate on that deeper level, or to stop and ask the secretary, how was your weekend? I care about you and I want to connect with you. Some of that small talk when we're passing the teachers in the hallways, for example. And it can feel really frustrating. It can, for me, I know it can seem like a factory. I'm operating in a factory, just one group after another, after another, after another, after another. And this doesn't prioritize the student, the therapist student relationship, right? Or the therapist client relationship, or those pleasantries of getting to really know your colleagues, the people that you're working with. Number 6 is note the errors that you've made. Okay. I am not afraid to say when I've made a mistake. Mistakes are growing moments. It took time to get there, I'm not going to lie, but they're growing moments and I'm always learning. That is one of our duties as an SLP. One of our roles and responsibilities is we are lifelong learners. Note the errors that you've made from having a high caseload or workload, because when I'm inundated with more and more work, right, this opens the door for the possibility that I'm going to make a mistake. If I'm rushing, going here, there, I might forget to do something. I might forget to add a detail. I could make a mistake, a little one, a medium-sized one, maybe even a big one. And I will tell you, in this field, we have to think about that. This field, we got to look at how important is it? Like, do we want to be making mistakes when we're looking at diagnosing or treating or documentation? Yes, mistakes happen, but let's look at why they're happening too, if we are rushing, right? So these areas are so important to think about, because we want accuracy as best as we can, right? So let's try to eliminate those things that move us away from accuracy. So these are just a few key points. There are 6 of them here to really understanding now and kind of setting the stage for what we need to point out when we're advocating for that support or better boundaries or just less work in our day, right? So again, I invite you, when you're pointing these out, try to stay as neutral as possible in your observations. Remove judgments, criticism, blame, stick to the facts as best as you can, okay? I'm going to head to the chat box and look in there. If anyone has anything else that they think that I've missed or they want to add to the list for the group, feel free to go in and do that. I might not be able to follow along with the chat exactly right now as I'm sharing, but I'm going to go back and look and see, what is everybody's experience, lived experience? What are you guys going through? So if this is something that is real for you, or you have other areas that you'd like to add, go ahead and pop those in the chat box. I'm going to move on to number 2. Okay, number 2, our next learning objective for this 1-hour course is identify 4 approaches for handling conflict. Let's take a quick moment now. What I want to do is I want all of you to think about or reflect on a time where your caseload or your workload at an assignment it wasn't sustainable. You couldn't do it, right? You lacked the support that you needed. You weren't really completing the job efficiently or effectively. Try to, if that's happened to you or is happening to you now, whatever job you're in, try to picture it. Remember the details. Think about the details of the assignment. Who was around? Who were you with? What was the level of support that you had? What was maybe the level of support that you needed that you didn't have? Oof, I have one in my mind that I'm thinking about. I've been there. And now I want you to kind of think about, how did you feel in that challenging time? What are some of the emotions that came up for you? Was there overwhelm, frustration, fatigue, anger, resentment, sadness, hopelessness, disappointment, stress, exhaustion? What was alive for you? Did you notice any impact on your health? Were you getting sick? More frequent colds? Maybe you weren't enjoying your lunch breaks, taking those lunch breaks that are much needed. Maybe you weren't exercising as much when you got home, so you just didn't have it in you. You were exhausted. Who did you turn to for support? Or did you remain quiet and keep to yourself? Did you find yourself advocating for your needs or stating your boundaries? And if so, who did you speak with? Did you just go home and maybe complain to a family member because that feels safest, and that's okay? Were you communicating to your boss? Were you from an agency? Did you maybe call up a colleague and share with them? Or did you go to the higher ups and share your concerns? Or maybe you just kind of trudged through. You trudged through. I'm just going to get through it. I've got some resentment, but I'm just going to trudge through. Or maybe you're like, nope, I'm going to refuse. I'm not going to take on any additional tasks. This is it. Anybody asks me anything? No, no, no. Right? And I'm going to come back to this reflection just a little bit later on. So thank you to those of you who reflected on this memory. I'm sure each person's experience is just so different with this, or maybe there's answers that are coming up in your mind that, probably would look different for each and every one of you, because here's why. We all have different ways of responding to challenges and conflicts due to so many variables, how we were raised, our culture, our conditioning. I mean, the list could go on. But I want to talk now specifically about 4. I want to share 4 ways that you might consider that you might fit into one of these on how you handle conflict. And I can't tell you how many therapists have told me, Stephanie, I just prefer to avoid it. Like literally, like I'm walking away right now, I'm going down the hall, I'm not dealing with it, right? Brush it under the rug, just be people pleasing. I don't want to make the tension worse. And others have told me that compliance is easier than facing the challenge head on or confronting it. You have a reference for a book in your handouts, and this book, you have quite a few references, but this book in particular is called Say What You Mean by Oren J. Safra. I use this book a lot as a resource. He's a trainer in nonviolent communication. I think there's about 700 or less in the world right now who are trained to be certified nonviolent communication trainers. And I love this book because in this book, Oren shares 4 different ways that we can habitually respond to conflict. Here they are listed. They're also listed in your handout. And the invitation here is to really listen closely to how I describe these, okay? And I want you to imagine which one calls out to you, if it does, okay? As how you maybe typically respond to conflict, maybe with your caseload or your workload management or issues in the workplace. Maybe when you're having those difficult conversations from the mentor-mentee relationship, supervision, maybe when you're trying to get your pay raised, maybe you've got challenges in IEPs with contentious or litigious families. Think about which one speaks to you. We have conflict avoidant, competitive confrontation, passivity, and passive aggression. Let's dive into what each of these mean in a nutshell, okay? Conflict avoidance, okay? It's what it sounds like. This means maybe when you get into a sticky conversation, you may be more likely to say things like, can we just focus on the positive things right now, guys, about our student? Or maybe you'll say something completely different that's completely off topic just to steer the conversation in a different way. You may go as far as ignoring the issue altogether and act as if there's no issue at all. So imagine a school-based SLP who's conflict avoidant, right? They're juggling this caseload of 75 students and they only have one day of SLPA support, right? This SLP is overwhelmed. They're run down, they're exhausted. And rather than addressing the issue with the admin, this conflict avoidant SLP, they may choose not to address their concerns because this SLP doesn't want to start a fire, because if they address it again with admin, maybe they could appear that they're complaining, maybe they could appear that they're ungrateful for their position. And they also maybe don't want to draw a lot of attention, have that spotlight on themselves as being someone maybe who's negative or ungrateful. So let's just avoid the talk with admin, out of the fear of the situation or the conflict could escalate, especially if, that admin always says no anyways. Well, remember that checklist that I shared with you with all the concerns that can come with that high caseload and workload. So now this SLP's got high numbers, right, on their diverse and complex caseload. Not enough time to fit it all in the way they'd like to. Maybe their emotions are heightened and their needs for support are not being met or advocated for. Maybe their relationships with their clients or the teachers are suffering because they don't have enough time in their schedule to keep building that rapport or to collaborate. And maybe now this SLP is making a ton of errors, right? Making a ton of errors on their reports because they're just having to, I just got to rush to get this report out. There's just too many IEPs due in the same week, right? So this SLP decides to quit. Maybe they put in their 2 weeks notice. Maybe they go to their recruiter, to the district, and they're like, I've got to get a different job, right? This is not sustainable. I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this. With this style of managing conflict, you're understanding what the needs are of others, right? But perhaps you're missing out now. You're missing out on this opportunity for engaging in really meaningful conversation with admin to express and share what you're feeling and what you're needing. And then determining like, hey, are there any strategies that we could do here to meet everybody's needs? Because everybody's needs matter. And we know this opens the door to deeper connections, more meaningful work, more understanding, more support on the job, all these positive things, rather than just hopping from job to job to job, hoping that one of these is going to stick and you'll eventually be conflict free. Competitive confrontation. This response is a little more aggressive in nature, right? Aggressive, right? Claws out in that our needs take priority and we forcibly put our needs on others, that power over. So much so that we don't even take their viewpoints, other people's viewpoints into consideration. So this is usually characterized by what is called life alienating communication and nonviolent communication. And that's where we're using blame, judgment, criticism, or diagnoses. Our tone of voice may change. Our volume may increase when we're speaking, right? This conflict avoidant person we talked about before, if they avoid and avoid and avoid, and then one day they snap, they just snap, they get loud and they shout, I'm not doing it. I'm done. I'm not doing it. I'm going to do it my way or the highway, right? They just kind of break and snap. This would be a flip to competitive confrontation, right? In competitive confrontation, our needs are going to be met because we're trying to reach our needs, but we're doing so at whatever and whoever's expense, right? We're not backing down. It's this strong mentality of I'm right, you're wrong. So if we go back to our scenario of the SLP having a high caseload, workload, too many meetings, too much paperwork happening, with the competitive confrontationalist, with this SLP, we would see, maybe they make a call. They're calling the higher ups, the admins. They've got a loud volume coming through the phone as they're expressing their message, changes in their tone of voice. They're now demanding, I need 3 days of an SLP to get this work done, right? Maybe the SLP is blaming admin. It's their fault. You gave me too many students. And, it's the fact that admin's the reason. They're not hiring enough people. They're putting all this work on me. Maybe the school site's falling apart. It's admin's fault that I'm making so many errors, right? And the reason why things are so chaotic, they never listen to me. So the SLP, they basically express, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this job. I don't want this job without any more SLPA time. It's not happening, and things are about to fall out of compliance fast, and I will take myself to another district, right? So you need to figure this out. And then maybe the SLP goes and goes back to their office and says to their SLPA, hey, I only have you for 1 day a week, but now I need you to see double the amount of students in your groups. No questions asked. Like, if I got all this work, you got all this work. So what's lacking in this approach, again, is the fact that everybody's needs matter. The SLP's needs, the SLPA's needs, the admin's needs. And if we take this approach of putting our needs in front of someone else's needs, and we do so using criticism, blame, judgment, shaming, this is where relationships start to fall apart. This is where those bridges can be burnt. Let's go on to passivity, okay? Passivity is when we go along with others, we give up on our own needs. I'm hearing like people pleasing coming up in my brain right now, right? It's like, whatever you want, I got this. Yes, whatever you need approach, right? So now we're flexible. We're perceived as flexible and easygoing and accommodating, right? And we say yes to things even when we don't want to say yes to things, right? The reason this is different than conflict avoidant is that in the conflict avoidant, we're avoiding that situation altogether in fear of escalating the problem, right? So you don't address it with admin at all. But with passivity, you might find yourself thinking, you know what, I'll do it just this time. I really want everybody to be happy, right? Or I'm new. I want to be liked. I want to be invited to happy hour after school, right? I want to have friends. Or, you know what, my happiness right now, it's not the priority. It's not important. Let's just get this done and this hurdle, and we'll be moving on to other things, right? You start to find ways just to appease people. And guess what? This too can be the breeding grounds for resentment over time, right? We start to resent because we're always saying yes to these people. We start to resent them, which can diminish our connections with others. So when we go back to our scenario of the SLP and SLPA, passivity would look like the SLP always taking on the extra work. Sure, take on the extra work. The district asked me, even when they don't think that they can fit it into their current schedule because they want to be liked, they want to be employee of the month, they're the new CF, they got to put their best foot forward, right? They want to be praised for their hard work and their ability to take one for the team, right? Let's take it for the team. And if they agree to this extra work, they think, yeah, everything will just move on smoothly. No bumps in the road. But again, with passivity, this style of conflict, you're prioritizing different needs. You're prioritizing your needs for belonging, for acknowledgement, maybe needs for peace, needs for harmony and acceptance, and that you're not ruffling anybody's feathers. And I'll tell you what, this requires you to have strong inner armor. So if you don't have that strong inner armor, beware. It is not for the weak. And what happens here too is that, again, it's the breeding grounds for resentment. We begin to resent others. You're giving into them time and time again, over and over again. And that will begin to impact the relationships that you have at work. Lastly, passive aggression. Okay. Somewhat confrontational in nature, kind of mixed with some passivity, sort of, if you will, because you may agree to do something, right? But I'll tell you what, behind those closed doors, you are complaining and you are blaming and you are bashing maybe that person who asked you to do that. Claws are coming out, but behind closed doors, right? You're maybe super sweet and nice to their face when they ask you to do this. You're like, okay. But when those doors are closed, your true nature of anger or resentment or frustration, it comes out. It's alive because that's what's real for you, right? So in this scenario, again, that we're talking about, this would look like the SLP kind of agreeing to take on the extra work, high caseload, but now they're murmuring all these negative comments like under their breath the whole way out the door about how unsupportive admin is or how ridiculous they are for even asking this, blaming them that it's their fault they didn't budget their money enough to hire the appropriate amount of staff, whatever. They'd be more organized if they blah, blah, blah. So this is passive aggression, right? It's taking on the work, but now here's what you're doing. You're like, well, I'll show them. They think I can fit all this in. Well, maybe I'll just not get to those therapy sessions today. Well, maybe that training will just have to sit on the back burner. Oh, you see those new referrals coming in? You think I have time to do those? They're just going to have to wait in the inbox because I just can't get to that right now, right? So that's some of that passive aggression coming through. And what's happening is the SLP is now sort of abandoning their own needs in that situation. And now we're going to have more problems. Now we're going to have all the problems that are mounting up with all these things that we're just not going to get to because we'll show them. We might have broken relationships, less happiness at work, less satisfaction in your role. I mean, the list goes on and on as our well-being crashes. These are 4 styles, according to Oren J. Soffer, that are habitual ways to handle conflict. Okay, so the question really here is compliance really more beneficial than advocating? I think the goal in conflict is really to try to see everyone's unique and diverse perspectives and to try to connect to everybody's, each person's feelings and needs in a situation, and then say, hey guys, let's strategize ways to meet as many needs possible for everybody. That is the goal. Everybody's needs matter. Everybody's needs matter. So the invitation now is to really self-reflect on what habitual conflict style do you operate in times of challenge or conflict in the workplace, or maybe even outside, because all my strategies are personal or professional. Think about this. If you're not exactly sure, I love that I put this together. This is so much fun. I have a free quiz on my website at goldenstateofmindpd.com. You can complete it for free under 2 minutes. You answer a series of questions and it will lead you to an answer from those 4 choices. And it will tell you the pros, because there's pros, and there's cons to each of those 4 strategies from Oren J. Soffer. And then it will print you out a nice little handout of tips, tricks, strategies, dependent on which style response you are and how to move forward. The reason I did this, the reason I love this, the reason I talk about this and spend time sharing this with you is because we need to recognize where do we land in conflict and challenge, right? So we can begin to shift, right? We want this transformation. We want to shift our processes for how we deal with conflict. Conflict is inevitable, okay? We're shift makers. I love that. We're shift makers. We are making the shift from reactive to intentional. We're making the shift from conditioned way of dealing with things to a renewed way of dealing with things. We are moving from confrontational to saying the same thing, but with compassion, getting our message across, and so on. So let's go back for a moment to the conflict or challenge that I had you reflect upon a little bit ago for experiential practice. Think about where you were, who you were with, what the details were of the job that you were in, okay, what the circumstances of the conflict were when you had the high caseload or workload. And I'm curious now, as you're thinking of that conflict and how you managed it, handled it, didn't handle it, no judgment in this at all, but in self-reflecting, which of these conflict styles do you really resonate with? Do you align with? Okay. If you feel comfortable doing so, go ahead and pop that in the chat box for everybody to see. Just put the number into the chat box. You can popcorn that number in there and we can see how many of us are like, oh, I can relate to that. They're on the same page as me because I want to normalize. All of these are very normal. Okay. So let's normalize that and see which category you fall into of conflict avoidance, competitive confrontation, passivity, or passive aggression. And again, reflect on the style you used in the situation that I asked you to think about, because it's possible that we might show up with different conflict response styles based on the situation. It can change from situation to situation, or low stake, high stake, or who we're with, context. But try to think about the exercise and think about maybe how you handled that. For me, before learning compassionate communication strategies, I handled conflict with a lot of passive aggression. That was my thing, right? I'd take on the burden with a big old smile, and then I would be right behind closed doors, complaining about it and maybe not getting to things that I should have got done, right? And when my frustrations would mount over and over time, I actually flipped to having that competitive confrontation. I was showing up and saying things or doing things that I later regretted, or I burned bridges. I burnt bridges, and some of them haven't been repaired in teams that I've worked with. I've been in the field since 2006. So long before I had these strategies, I thought I was showing up doing the best I could do. And I always was like, had the child in mind, and that was my priority. But I didn't realize that how my words were landing, it wasn't serving me. But learning nonviolent communication strategies and studying compassionate communication and practicing these strategies have really changed the game for me. So, I've learned how to advocate, how to set boundaries, how to express my anger or emotions fully. We can express our anger. We can show up angry in a way that's still compassionate. And I learned these through Dr. Marshall Rosenberg's framework of nonviolent communication. So I can't quite explain it in words, but if you practice this NVC, it's almost like immediately you start noticing the little differences and changes that are blossoming in your life. Okay. I want you to think about just a little mini quiz for you as we're moving on. I'm going to give you a couple scenarios real quickly, and I want you to try to think about which of these would apply to the scenario. So the first scenario is in a hospital acute care department, a nurse consistently challenges the recommendations of the SLP, asserting their approach as superior and dominating discussions. So think about that for a second. Feel free to throw your answer in the chat box if you want to throw a number, if you can guess what it is. Here are your choices. I'll give you a second to think about that. But again, you have a nurse who is powering over the SLP, saying that their approach is superior and will dominate all discussions. If you thought competitive confrontation, we are in agreement on that one. Let's try another one. And get those fingers ready to popcorn your answers into that chat box. An SLP working in a school setting notices a disagreement among team members regarding the distribution of resources for therapy materials. And instead of addressing the issue directly, they choose to stay quiet during team meetings to avoid potential conflict. Okay? So you kind of hear it right in there, right? Like, well, we're not going to address that issue. We're going to stay quiet and we're going to avoid the conflict. Which one do you think it is? Popcorn your answers in. If you guessed conflict avoidance, then we are in agreement. Let's look at frustrated with a lack of collaboration from a colleague in a school setting, an OT starts deliberately scheduling conflicting meeting times and withholds essential information, expressing their displeasure indirectly. Okay, so they're expressing their frustration through actions rather than directly addressing the issue with their colleague. And they're deliberately creating some ripples in the duties. What do you think that is? Popcorn that into that chat box. Remember, they're withholding essential information. If you guess passive aggression, we would be in agreement. Let's try one more. An SLPA in a clinic setting finds a more efficient method for handling the SLP's tasks, but refrains from suggesting changes during team meetings in order to show that they are a team player and flexible, choosing instead to comply with existing procedures. Choosing instead to comply. I want to be flexible. I'll just do it. I really don't want to do it, but I want to be flexible. And flexibility is good. Don't get me wrong. It's good to be flexible. If you guess passivity, then we are in agreement. All right, so now that we have an idea of what the different types of conflict response styles are, or that we resonate with, what can we do about it? What can we do? Is compliance really easier than advocating? And the simple answer is no, because when our needs are not met, guys, there are grave consequences that we face. And these can include disconnected relationships, reduced happiness, loss of trust, resentment, feeling less empowered, fear and uncertainty, domination in relationships. The list goes on and on. And for all my research lovers out there, I pulled this one in particular. This is according to a PubMed Central Journal article that's titled Conflict Management, Difficult Conversations with Difficult People. This was published in 2013. And this quote here comes directly from the article. So conflict occurs frequently in any workplace. Healthcare is not an exception. The negative consequences include dysfunctional teamwork, decreased patient satisfaction, and increased employee turnover. Research demonstrates that training in conflict resolution skills can result in improved teamwork, productivity, and patient and employee satisfaction. I love this article. I have it listed on the bottom for you. It's in your handouts because there's some great strategies listed in this article, even more that we don't have time to go over today, that will support you with just managing conflict in the workplace. So if you have time, if you love research, check that one out. We're going to move on to, we are moving along at a good timing here. So we're going to touch base onto what is, let's see, this is our last learning objective for this course. So we are going to talk about how can we connect to feelings and needs, and how can we put this into a conversation or a dialogue that's going to be clear and it's going to be constructive. And we want our listeners' ears to be open. We want them to have that active listening, because when we include shame, blame, judgment, criticism, labeling, you're lazy, diagnoses in our conversations with others, what happens is they're going to close their ears. They're not going to be interested in what you have to say, or they're already going into defend mode, thinking about how they need to say something back or hurt you back, or maybe they're internalizing that and hurting themselves, right? So let's take a look at how we can connect to our own feelings and needs, and we can use this as a tool to be able to communicate what it is that we need to share. The way we connect to ourselves and others really is the 4-step pathway, okay? And this is what was presented from Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication. Another resource I have in your handouts, you will see, actually it's a QR code, it's listed right here. I have a lot more outside of the handout in a free downloadable workbook that goes into some of the highlights of nonviolent communication. So you can see if you're interested. It has the framework in there, it has script phrases, has resources for you, tips and tricks, a little letter from me as well. And so Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, the first book that got me absolutely hooked was called Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life. I'm going to say that again because it's a short, simple, easy read. It's Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. He is deceased now. And it's called Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life. And he shares this 4-step pathway. So this 4-step pathway, the first step is identify your observations with I statements. But he says observations is the first step. And when we look at observations, we're skilled clinicians here, right? We want to remove our evaluations, what we think about it, what shades it a little bit with our opinions and our thoughts, remove all that and stick to the observations, okay? And we're going to put this all into place at the very end here. The second step is name your feelings that are universal. So in this QR code, in this workbook I gave you, I have a list of Dr. Marshall Rosenberg's universal feelings list, because there's a lot of words that we think are feelings that actually cause harm. Like if I said, I felt abandoned, the listener might be like, I didn't abandon you, or they might go on a defense. That's harmful. But if I said, I felt scared when I was alone, my observation, when I was alone for 2 hours, I felt scared, right? So we're turning it back on ourselves. So we're going to get our same point across using neutral observations and connecting to universal feelings. So when you want to write those texts, write those emails, have those difficult conversations, go into this workbook, grab those universal feelings to know that they are the ones that are going to help to connect you with your conversation partner. Number 3, connect to your universal needs. Same thing. We say universal because everybody can understand it. We all experience these needs. We all experience these feelings. And when we stick to the universal ones, it supports empathy. It supports shared reality. It supports mutual understanding. Oh, I get that. I know what it feels like to be that, or I know what that's like to need support, right? So 3 is connect to your universal needs in the moment. And then 4 is we're making a request. We're making a request of someone else. And when we make a request, we want to make sure that our request is clear, positive, and actionable. Clear, very transparent. Positive, we want to say what we do want, not what we don't want, just like when we're working with our students, okay? And actionable. We want them to have a step to take, okay? So I'm going to put that all together for you, because when we do this, guys, when we use Dr. Marshall Rosenberg's framework to communicate what it is in our mentorship, in our advocacy, in our personal relationships, in times of conflict or challenge, or even in wonderful times, this is where we will balance ourselves. Especially in conflict, we can balance ourselves here in conflict. It's here that we are caring for everybody's needs, everybody's feelings. It's here that We are learning how to express ourselves free from judgment, free from blame, because I want to be connected with you. That's my intention. My intention is to connect, right? I want to connect. And when we do this, guys, we are creating space. We're creating this open space for relationships to blossom, for more trust to come, for there to be more emotional safety in the conversation. And ultimately, in our teams now, our relationships can strengthen, our collaboration can strengthen, we're going to be more productive, our environments, so important, are going to be more peaceful and harmonious. Okay, guys, this is where endless possibilities can be strategized. Okay, so you're like, all right, well, how does this have to do with advocating for caseload and workload wellness? Let's put this all together now into what I kind of created as, okay, so I took this framework and I put it into an email as though I'm advocating. I want you to listen up for those I statements, those observations, right? Where it's like going back to our first learner objective, all those pain points, those are our observations. How I feel about them, the I feel statements, my I need statements, okay, what I'm needing right now, and my requests that I'm going to make to the higher ups that are going to be positive, actionable, and clear. So take a look at this email template that I have here. Feel free to adapt it, change it, use it in your advocacy. Dear whoever, your admin, higher ups, when I observe, or you can say when I notice, whatever language feels right for you. When I notice that my caseload is at 75 students and the paperwork is profuse, I feel overwhelmed and frustrated because I need to be efficient and effective in my role. And the diversity and the complexity of cases demand varying amounts of attention and time. When the meetings are 2 to 3 hours in length, taking time for my report writing, and numerous errors are occurring because I'm burnt out when I finally get to writing them, I feel concerned and I feel stressed because I need a work environment that supports accuracy and excellence. I'm experiencing intense emotions like hopelessness and anger and irritation, fill in the ones that work for you. I feel emotionally drained and I'm feeling anxious because I need a balanced and supportive work atmosphere. And when I notice there's not enough time to address all these tasks adequately, I feel stressed and worried because I need to stay in compliance with timelines. They love the compliance piece. They want to be in compliance too. I noticed that the high caseload affects rapport with my students and relationships on the team. And I feel concerned and disappointed because I need to build those strong relationships with clients and colleagues. When I see that, the administration does not email me back about my challenges that are arising from this workload, I feel stuck and unheard because I'm needing open and effective communication channels, right? Therefore, here comes our request. I request a meeting, clear, positive, actionable. I request a meeting next week with you to address the workload issues, including maybe a review of caseload distribution, streamlining paperwork processes, and exploring strategies to enhance efficiency. I believe that by addressing these concerns, we can create a work environment that will be supportive for more well-being, reduced errors, strengthened relationships, whichever ones from those pain point lists apply to you, ultimately contributing to everyone's success. Sincerely, me. Okay. Observations come from those pain points. How do you feel? Truly connect to that universal feeling list. All feelings, Dr. Marshall Rosenberg would say, stem from met or unmet needs. If you're feeling frustrated, it's because you're needing support. If you have the support, you wouldn't be frustrated. Emotions are the wisdom, guys. They're the wisdom. Listen to them. Allow them. Receive your emotions. Don't kick yourself like, oh, I'm feeling this way again. I shouldn't be. Allow, receive, take note, pay attention. Okay. All right, we talked about understanding the pain points around high workloads and caseloads that are going to help you build those objective pain points in your framework, in your advocacy. We talked about understanding and identifying 4 different ways that we could habitually respond to conflict. And there's pros and cons and tips and tricks for each one of those waiting for you if you try that quiz on goldenstateofmindpd.com. And we talked about a new approach to conflict, which is the 4-step pathway that was brought to us through Dr. Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication. So remember, guys, using these strategies in your practice, they are going to help you to successfully manage your tasks, serve others with more resilience, understanding, and care. There is that QR code again. It will be on your handout. This is what Crystal has shared with me. This is some feedback. She has taken a compassionate communication course from me. And she says, I've been a part of IEP teams and school-based teams in different capacities as an employee. She's an SLP, as a service provider, as a parent. She is the parent of an autistic child, and as an advocate. She has her own advocacy right there, Sanford Autism Advocacy Group. She says the strategies I learned through Stephanie's class were amazing and very supportive in being able to see kids ultimately receive what they need and teams be able to move forward. I share this because, like, I don't know about you, but I feel like a sense of relief knowing that I don't have to stay feeling stuck, right? So just think about it. Imagine how powerful the outcomes can be when we take these science-backed principles of compassionate communication strategies and mindfulness, and we bring them into our personal and our professional lives, and we do so consistently, little bit by little bit. It's not going to cure us from all the challenges and difficulties that are in our field, but it's going to change how we are affected by them, how we receive them, how we show up, and who we want to be when the times get tough. I used to be the one when the times get tough, I got going. And that didn't serve me, because guess what? Times are tough everywhere. So we need to strengthen up. We need to strengthen up in our role. So it's about transforming this conflict, not avoiding it, not making it go away, but how can I be with it? How can I be in this space? We're wrapping up. Before we dive into our Q&A, I want to mention, if you enjoy this 1 hour, if I planted some seeds, if you're interested to learn more, I'm excited to share that I do have a course called Shift Makers 1.0, Embracing Connection, Transforming Conflict. It's 4 hours of PD just in this step-by-step framework for becoming a shift maker, which is empowering you with the tools and strategies you need to move from reactivity to advocacy, to boundary setting, to resilience building, to strengthening and deepening those relationships, supervisor to mentee, mentee to supervisor, and so on. And these strategies, what I love about what I share is, again, you can use them personally, you can use them professionally. And while I've touched on some of these principles today, this course takes a deeper dive into those nonviolent communication principles, like strengthening your presence, your ability to show up for active listening, to be clear, to remove your biases, your conditioning, to be fully aware for others, strengthening your empathy for yourself and others. What is empathy? What does that look like? How can I be empathetic towards others and myself? How to make requests, right? What are these strategies for, I ask for things, but I get no. Well, how are you asking? What are the words that you're using? Are you using any of this life alienating communication? Is it clear, positive, and transparent? So if you resonated with this class today, you'll find even more value in this program. And you do receive 50% off if you use the coupon code. I think later they're going to put in the Q&A the link where you can find that course if it does interest you. And that's the coupon code, which you'll also find in your handouts, all caps SLP Summit. So, and you're going to get 4 hours of professional development. All right, if you guys are ready to make the shift from feeling emotionally and physically burnt out, depleted, just overworked, undervalued, maybe misunderstood in your role, to feeling more empowered, feeling more confident, feeling resilient, having those deeper relationships with enhanced communication and more personal growth, as someone who knows your value, as someone who knows your worth, when you're showing up in your role, I invite you to think about nonviolent communication strategies. Remember, it is possible to manage all of the challenges and the difficulties that are going to come your way. They're going to come. They're not going to stop. And you can take control of the situation and get a handle on it before it gets a handle on you. And you can change how you feel. You can change the way you show up in your role by learning and applying some of these principles of compassionate communication. You guys, you can do this. One thought, one word, one breath at a time, and I have your back. Just remember, we do not rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. What does that mean? You get into a conflict, you think, no, I got this. I know how I'm going to show up. I know what I'm going to say. I know it'll be okay. You expect it to be a certain way, but we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. Okay, so that completes our course for today. I did go about 2 minutes over. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you to everybody who has been here today. You guys are an amazing audience at SLP Summit. I'm just so grateful for you. I'm grateful for SLP Summit, all the hard work that goes into providing you guys this professional development. I value you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And you'll see here how you can reach me with this slide.
Lots of love for you in the chat saying that this wasn't just an amazing way to end Summit, but an amazing way to start the upcoming school year for a lot of people. So thank you so much. This is the official end of the course. We're going to stay on to do some Q&A, but just a reminder that this will mark the official end of the course, and to check out that ASHA CE opt-in requirement form that's in the resources section. And if that is something you're looking to do, is earn ASHA CEUs. If you have any questions at all, please email us at hello@bethebrightest.com with any of your questions. So let me get to some of these questions. Do you have any advice specific to introverts who really struggle to make conversation?
Yes, I do. When it comes to introverts, I completely understand where you're coming from. I think advocacy and advocating for yourself can feel really daunting, especially for introverts who might prefer to process internally rather than assert themselves outwardly. So I want to say it's okay. It's okay to feel this way. And it's important to always honor whatever your comfort level is. And I would say one strategy to get started would really be to start small. I think if you can begin by practicing self-advocacy in kind of like what I mentioned, low stakes situations. So maybe just expressing your preferences to families or the families that you know, family or friends, for example, this would be a good way to start. And then gradually you can work your way up to those more significant conversations or situations. And I think also introverts have a lot of strengths. So leverage your strengths that you have. So for example, you might have a lot of thoughtful reflection or preparation. For example, these might be some of your skills. Take time to think about your thoughts, to plan and prepare what you want to say before you show up and advocate for yourself. Write down key points that you really want to, express, and maybe rehearse it. Try rehearsing it with yourself, rehearse it with a buddy that you trust in a safe space. And that maybe that trying these strategies, this can support you with bringing more confidence for when it is time to speak up. Just remember, advocacy is something that it's a strategy, and you can build this skill slowly over time, step by step. So be patient with yourself. Celebrate every little, step that is new for you or that you make along the way, no matter how big or how small. And just know that, there are people out there who are more than happy to support you.
Awesome. There was a question too. What if you use all of these great strategies and communicate it to your higher ups and they agree with you, but then it's just, the response, but there is no help available. Yeah, we see you need help, but there's none available. Do you have any advice when faced with that sort of situation?
So that's very real. That is very real and very true. So yes, what I'm hearing is like, we've done the steps, we've done the strategies, we've shown up, we've asked for help, and the answer is no, right? That's what I'm hearing is, what do we do when we hear no? So I think this is important because remember, I shared in this presentation that everybody's needs matter. So I think the first thing we need to do is we really need to kind of, first of all, have empathy for administration. Maybe what's going on for them? What are they feeling? What could they be needing in this moment? Always bring curiosity. I'm curious about that. I'd like to learn more. So I want to hear from them. I want to hear from admin. I want to hear their perspective on this. I want to come with an open mind. I want to remember that maybe what's going on for them, their needs matter too. But then you can also think about, well, I have a purpose here, and how can I align my purpose with that of my organization's goals? So what are their goals? So I could sit here and say, okay, I know this is important for them. This is a goal and this is my purpose. So I could show them how by me doing X, Y, and Z, it supports their goal of A, B, or C, for example. You can also talk about long-term benefits. So I think, we kind of talked about in this professional development that we see a lot of turnover. I don't know where you guys are working, maybe not, but where we are in Southern California, I work with a lot of different districts with my non-public agency, and the turnover is great, so you can talk about that. You could talk about employee retention and turnover and what that looks like, and when there's higher staff morale, and how there can just be more positive outcomes if they're able to hear, what your needs are and your goals are.
Okay, we'll do one more question, and then I know you have a giveaway that we'll do as well, but I think this is a really valid question too, that if you take the time to write something like this person is saying that they feel like their supervisor would say that they don't understand what the problem is because the other 12 SLPs have the same caseload and are not feeling overwhelmed like you are. And so somebody else replied to that and said, exactly, it might just be because the others aren't speaking up. So any advice in situations like that where you are kind of the first one to bring this to light, and it may be received with, that's just your reality, not the reality of everyone else.
I love how you say that, right? Because that's that shared reality that I'm talking about. Like, I want you to see how it is for me. It might not, everybody can handle different things, like somebody's asked me, what would be the right caseload number? And I'm like, well, go by your state, but also, again, the diversity and complexity and what people can handle and how much work they want to do. Everybody is so unique and so different. So I would say if you really encounter this sort of this resistance from the other party, I think no matter what they're saying is their reason, but you're not hearing what it is that you want to hear. You're hitting a wall. I think it's really important, first of all, to stay grounded in your approach, right? Start by actively listening, because immediately you're probably like jumping to judgment and criticism of them and blaming they don't understand. So maybe stay grounded, start by actively listening to what their concerns are, what their viewpoints are, and then maybe express some empathy, like, okay, I understand where you're feeling comfortable with how all the other SLPs are managing the roles right now, and that's good for you. It's meeting your needs for productivity at this school or that school. But now I'm going to kind of gently steer the conversation, because I've validated their points. I've heard, remember, validation or listening to others or casting information back to them does not mean that you have to agree, but you're hearing their viewpoints, you're listening, and then you're staying calm and grounded. And if you're not, you're going to say, you know what, can we get back to this conversation at a later time? And then you're going to do what you need to do just to regulate your nervous system. Then you're going to gently steer the conversation, and you're going to bring in that constructive dialogue. So now you're calm, you're empathetic, and you're going to kind of say, I'd really like to collaborate a little bit more on this. I'd really like to strategize, because here's my situation, the objective pain points, and I'm feeling this way about it. So do you think we could sit down together and take a look at this and strategize some ways that I could move forward, right? Because now you're welcoming their input, because you still have your valid concerns, and you still need to advocate for those, even when someone's like, well, everybody else has it, it's just kind of you. Well, yeah, that might be very well and true, but it's me and I matter. I do want to sit down and I do want to talk about this, and I'm open. This is the SLP saying, I'm open to hearing maybe some suggestions you have, or maybe what some other SLPs are doing to manage their caseloads, what some of their strategies are, because I'm open to anything, because I really want to create change, because this isn't sustainable and this isn't working. Right. So what time next week can I get on your calendar to sit down for 30 minutes to talk about some of these strategies that I'd be happy to implement, and then we can reconnect again after that.
Well, and you did mention your course, and that is for anybody that is interested in taking advantage of the offer. If you go into the questions part, the questions tab at the very top, there is a direct link that you can click to access that. But can you tell us a little bit more about, you are giving this particular course away to one lucky winner? Okay.
Yes, that's correct. So there is somebody who will get access to, it's a self-paced online digital course. It's 4 hours. You're going to scoop up those continuing education units, and it is a course that is going to support you, again, with active listening, empathy, setting boundaries. We're going to dive deep into the frameworks of nonviolent communication. You're going to get word banks that you can use in your texts, your emails. I'm going to give you I've gotten feedback that people have really enjoyed the situational scenarios. So there's a lot of experiential practice in this course as well, where, I ask questions and we pause it, and then you have an opportunity to reframe the sentences from life alienating communication into compassionate communication, which is that communication that connects us. So there's a lot of practice opportunities. There's guides. So I'm very excited for somebody who came today to be able to receive that course and have access to that.
Yeah, awesome. So the winner is Mary Dollar, Dahler, and we will connect you with Mary's contact information so Mary can get access to her free course. But thank you to everyone who's joining us, whether
Awesome.
you're live or on demand. We could not do this without our amazing presenters as well as our amazing audience. So we hope everyone has the most awesome school year or work year. I know a lot of you are going back to a school setting that is starting within the next month or two. So have a wonderful school year, and hopefully all of the information you've learned in this course and all of the other summit courses will make it the best year yet. So thanks again, Stephanie, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.